We're live.
Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits. Kansho.
Good morning. Today is June 4th, 2023, and we welcome you to Newark Buddhist Church's Sunday service streamed live on YouTube and Facebook. We will begin with quiet sitting. Please sit up straight. Feet flat on the floor. Gently calm your mind and follow your breath.
Namo Amidabits, 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 Namo Amidabits.
We will begin with Sambujo, 3 respectful callings on page 8. followed by Hyoyakuman, dedication, and then the reading of names for the month of June. Today's suture chant is Sanbutsuge, Tan Nembutsu Akokomer Chantrance, followed by Vandana Tisarana on page 7. Today's Gobuncho is Shonen Ichiro no Sho. Reverend Kurt Rai will share today's Dharma message. Our closing gathas are Ondoksan 2 and Nembutsu on page 134 and 135. Namu Amida Butsu.
We respectfully call upon Tathagata Amida to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon Tathagata Shakyamuni to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon Tathagatas of the 10 directions to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. In reverent contemplation, we realize that Amida Tathagata, in order to liberate all ordinary beings who possess deep and heavy negative karma, has fulfilled the primal vow, merit of which is transferred towards sentient beings by Amida's power. This is the teaching shared by Shinran Shonin, the founder of Jodo Shinshu, our denomination of Buddhism. How fortunate we are to hear it. May we all turn to the great wisdom and compassion of Amida Tathagata in the present life and walk the great path of gratitude and thus attain birth in the Pure Land and the peace of nirvana. Today, members and friends of the New York Buddhist Church gather to lovingly recall family members, friends, and teachers who passed away during the month of June. Through their lives and example, they brought us to this wonderful teaching today. We know they are now one with the great light and life of Amida Buddha and continue to guide us on our own journeys in life, wherever they may take us. These are the names of those commemorated this month. Deborah Allen, Tim Arai, Pearl Cohen, Jim Dugan, Kimiko Eguchi, Takashi Himata, Yoko Ichikawa, Hiroshi Kaneko, Toyoko Kikuchi, Sharon M. Kim, June Kishi, Michael Leonard, Thompson Liu, Hatsu Matsu, Richard Ken Matsushita, Kayoko Mitani, Wendy Morihisa, Soko Morinaga, John Yoshio Nagahiro, Ichihei Nakamura, Richard Kazumi Nishikawa, Sakai Nishimura, Alice Okada, Taka Okada, Genosuke Shinamoto, Masayo Shimamoto, Diwa Shimamoto, Taeko Shirakigawa, Lieutenant Marcus A. Stoltz, Mitsuko Takaishi, Kiyo Tomita, Shinako Tomita, Tomizu Tomita, Akira Washio, Jeff Williamson, Kuniharo Yamagishi, Robert Takashi Yanagita. With adoration, we read the sutras in praise of Amida Tathagata and express our gratitude for the Buddha's great compassion. Please join me in saying the Nembutsu, the Buddha's most honored name. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 And now please turn to page 47 in the service book for the sutra chanting Sambutsuge.
Shabbat
Befekage Moshe Setda Kamya Shisha Han Shisha Kakanyaze Shonin Hijinan Ryoga Sabat Shokada Daichi Goshu Kimya Dojo Shoset Kakanyanai on Nimutoso Gato Aimin Dodatu Isai Jiparai Shinnet Shogo Ishtogakoku Keraku Anon Kobuten Shinyo Zega Shinsho Hotengan no Hi Riki Shoyoku Jipo Seson Chi Emuge Joryo Shison Chiga Shingyo Keryo Shinshi Shoku Dokuchu Gagyo Shojin Ninja Ganishikodoku Bioda Seisai Ohotenba Daishin Namo Amida Butz, 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 Namo Amida Butz. And now please rise for the Vandana and Tisarana on page 7. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kie Butsu. Namo Kie Butsu. Namo Kie Ho. Namo Kie Ho. Namo Kie So. Namo Kie So. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Please be seated. And now turn to page 4 and 5 for the Jodo Shinshu Creed.
Hello? Is that good? Okay, so the Jodo Shinshu Creed, we're going to do the creed number 2. That's the bottom portion on page 4. So please join me. Casting off the self-power mind of the varied practices and disciplines, we entrust ourselves single-mindedly to Amida Tathagata to save us in regard to the one great matter of birth. With one thought moment of entrusting, we know that we are saved and that our birth is settled. After this, we say the name in joy and gratitude, repaying the Buddha's graciousness. We acknowledge gratefully that we are able to hear and understand this teaching because of the benevolence of our Master having appeared in this world and of the successors in the transmission, the good teachers whose words were not shallow. Beyond this, we will observe the established rules of conduct throughout our lives. Namami the Butts, Namami the Butts, Namami the Butts.
And now please turn to page 127 for the Gobuncho. And first we'll read the English translation together. The tradition of Shinran Shonen. What is taught in the tradition of Shinran Shonen is that the entrusting heart is essential. For when we abandon various practices and take refuge in Amida with singleness of heart, our birth in the Pure Land is settled by the Buddha through the inconceivable thou power. The state we thus attain is described as with awakening of a single thought of entrusting, we join those who are in the stage of the truly settled. Recitation of the Nembutsu thereafter should be understood to be the Nembutsu as an expression of gratitude for the Tathagata's benevolence for settling our birth in the Pure Land, humbly and respectfully. Shonin ichiru no gokanke no omomuki wa shinji no motte honto serare soro sono yue wa moro moro no zogyo o nagesutete Ishini mida ni kimyo sureba Fukashigi no ganriki to oshite Buten no kata yori ojo waji jo Seshime tamo sono kurai o Ichinen poki nyu shoujo shiju tomo shakushi sono ue no shomyo nembuta nyorai waga ojo osadame tamaishi gon hojin no nembuto Kokoro Beki Nari Anakashiko Anakashiko Nam Amida Butts, Nam Amida Butts, Nam Amida Butts. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming out on this beautiful day. And now, our main event, we will have a Dharma talk by Reverend Kurt Rai, supervising minister of the Ekoji Buddhist Temple here in our own Eastern District. by video, and so please listen and give it your full attention.
Good morning, everyone. Can you please join me in Gasho? Flowing and turning in the three worlds of delusion, and unable to sever the bonds of desire and attachment, discarding them now and entering into the uncreated, becoming a true and real being of gratitude and indebtedness. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namadats, namadats, namadats. Good morning, everyone, again. I am Reverend Kurt Rai. I am the supervising minister of the Koji Buddhist Temple, which is in Fairfax, Virginia, the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So we are your sister temple on the Eastern District of the Buddhist Churches of America. I'd like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to give the Dharma talk today. For us that are gathered here today, whether virtually or in person, we realize that we do celebrate at the first Sunday of every month what is described as Shosuki Hoyo, which is a Memorial Day service. I remember when I started going to the Seattle Temple many, many years ago, I was very confused by all these rituals that we do in Jodo Shinshu regarding those that have passed on. For me, coming from a Christian background, I was a little confused with what I thought was an emphasis on death. But as I hope you'll understand from my talk today, is that we take that our understanding of death as part of our life cycle. And instead of focusing on it as something to dread, what we do is we incorporate it into our philosophy and our way that we lead our spiritual life. So traditionally, what we do is we gather at the beginning of the month, and some of the temples that have a large membership, like I'm here in Fresno, California, we have the Fresno Batsuin, which has about 700 members. It's quite large. And when I served at this temple, the Shosuki Hoyo service, we would read every name of those that have passed. Well, the Fresno temple was established or founded in 1901, so you can imagine how many names there are. I mean, literally 100 to 200 names are read the first Sunday of every month. And I worked with Reverend Miyagi, and he developed what I called a rap to get through all these names so quickly because we had to read them. And then people come up and then they offer Oshoko or offer incense while we're reading the names and while we're chanting. They streamlined it here now, so what they do is they actually project the names up and people will come up. But what is this emphasis? Why are we gathering at the beginning of the month to remember those who have passed on? In most spiritual traditions, the idea of birth and death is very important. A lot of times when somebody finds out that I'm a Buddhist minister, they say, well, what is the Buddhist view of death? It's a pretty loaded question to try to answer very succinctly or in a sound bite. But basically what we talk about is we talk about the life cycle, and that we tend to think very dualistically. We tend to think that there's birth and then there's death. And the idea that when we study through Jodo Shinshu, when we follow our teachings of Shinran Shonin, is we try to incorporate that we're trying not to make them so dualistic that it's birth and death. They're actually one of the same things combined. I remember when my mother was in the hospital and was passing. It was the first person that I lost that was that close to me. This was many years ago. And I remember sitting there with my brother and we were talking. My mother was unconscious. And I remember hearing this ding. And I thought, what is that ding? About every 20 minutes or an hour, there'd be a ding. And finally, we asked the nurse. I said, well, what's that sound? She says, that means somebody's been born. That they would ring this bell that every time a child had been born in the hospital. And it made the circumstance so much more comforting for my brother and I that here we were at the end of the life cycle of my mother, but there was the beginning of the life cycle for these dozens of babies that were born while we were in the hospital. And in a very realistic way, it made me realize that it is all part of the life cycle, that it's not one or the other. So I'd like to discuss a little bit about some of our rituals in Jodo Shinshu. Besides gathering for the first Sunday of the month and reading the names, we also have other rituals that revolve around when someone passes and how we reflect upon that passing and what does it mean to us spiritually. we have, and what I also like to do is like to point out some of the differences between our school of Buddhism and some of the other schools of Buddhism and how they deal with death. So when someone passes or is about to pass, traditionally we do what we call a makara gyo, or which we call in English the pillow service. And this is when the minister goes to where the person is passing, whether it's the hospital, whether it's in the middle of the night, it doesn't matter. I've been in every kind of circumstance, whether they're at home. And the idea behind this is that we go there and we support the family. Traditionally in Japan, you try to go to the family while the person is still alive so they can hear you chanting the sutras as a gentle reminder that the Nembutsu or the Dharma is always with this person, even upon their deathbed. But in America, it's more reverted to people going after someone has passed. The ministers will go, or the minister's assistants will go and offer comfort to the family. So people a lot of times think, well, is this a last rite? Is it like in Catholicism where the priest comes and blesses the person on their deathbed? And it's not. Again, this shows how in Buddhism we understand that this is the life cycle. And so what we're doing is we're going there, we're acknowledging that the person is passing, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to remind the family of the Dharma to help them go through this moment of very deep grief. I've done well over 100 of these makara gyos or pillow services, and every service is very special and different. But the one thing that's very common, including people that I've done the service for that weren't Jodo Shinshu, is that you go there and you talk with the family, they talk about their loved one, and then when we ring the bell and I start to chant, all of the emotions come out. It's like letting people say it's okay to acknowledge that your loved one has passed on. And it's doing it in a very nurturing environment, putting it in the context of the Dharma and how that we are grateful that we're able to hear the Dharma. I only did one of these makara gyos when I served a koji 10 years ago, and it was with a Korean family, and the mother did not speak English, and the two daughters were American-born. And even though they didn't understand what I was chanting, it was very meaningful for them, and they thanked me. So these rituals and traditions were not there to make sure that the person goes on to the Pure Land or reaches nirvana at that moment. What we're there is they're there to nurture the family and to reflect upon the Dharma. Traditionally, we have a 49th day memorial service, which is done on the 49th day after the person passes. And again, this is a big contrast to how some other schools of Buddhism view death. So in other schools of Buddhism, the 49th day is very symbolic because this is the day that the person is reborn. Indeed, if you talk to some of the Japanese members or some of the older Japanese American members, they might remember that their family would not eat meat for the first 49 days after someone passed, even though it was not a Shin idea, Jodo Shinshu idea. It was a general idea in Buddhism in Japan that you do not want to eat anything because it might be your loved one that's being reborn into another life form. In Shin Buddhism, we don't take it that literally. We understand doctrinally that upon our physical death, that we are released to what we call nirvana, or most specifically being referred to as the Pure Land. And the idea is that what we do is that we know that that person is guaranteed. One of the things that I appreciate about Jodo Shinshu is there's a term that's called non-retrogression. That's the English word for it. Non-retrogression means that once we start the Jodo Shinshu path, that upon our physical death, we'll be released to nirvana. I really love this idea of this non-retrogression, that we're not worried about on our deathbed that have we been a good enough Buddhist, have we gone to temple enough Sundays, have we done enough good deeds. All of those things were resolved. Our founder Shinran Shonin was very clear about this. In his writings, which are called the Kyogyo Shinsho, he made very clear that everyone has this non-retrogression. And that even though that maybe when I was 25 years old I was very devout and I would go every Sunday, maybe now I don't go to temple as much, but the idea is that it's not what you're doing in the moment, is that you started this process. And so that's wonderful because in other Pure Land schools of Buddhism, they do have deathbed rituals where the person is saying the Nembutsu while they're passing, and if they don't say the Nembutsu or if they become unconscious, then they will be reborn. Shinran Shonin in his Kyogyo Shinsho made it very clear that we do not believe in these deathbed rites. Another one is that they would have a scroll of Amida Buddha, and they'd have beautiful colored strings coming from the hand of Amida, and the person on their deathbed would pull back and hold on to it so they would be concentrating on the Nembutsu at the moment that they passed. For me personally, both as a Shin Buddhist and as a minister, it's very refreshing to go and not worrying about the afterlife. I'm not like like a Christian minister where people are saying, is my mother going to heaven or hell? What is the situation? It's all resolved. And so what that does is that puts the focus back on our everyday life. Again, the idea of the non-duality of life and death, it is all one life. Now, when we talk about being released to nirvana, some people will ask me, well, why does it have to be, why did Shinran say it had to be on our physical death? And the explanation is that we have attachments. We have our mind processes going, and as a human being, even breathing, as we know, we have the auto system where we're breathing whether we're conscious of it or not, our heart's beating whether we're conscious of it or not. And the idea is that upon physical death, that's the only time that we are actually released from this human body in order to reach nirvana. So nirvana is, the extinction of passions. It means that we will not be reborn again, and we are at one with Amida Buddha in the symbolic Pure Land. So getting back to the ritual, so we do the 49th day service. Some of you are aware that I worked in the public mental health field for 20 years before I went into the ministry. And so here we have these beautiful traditional ideas. So I would go as a minister to the hospital, wherever the person passed. The emotions are very raw. Then we have the 49th day service. People are still grieving very strongly. But these services brings the family together and puts them in a Dharma environment. So whether the service is done at their home in front of their little altar, their Butsudan, or whether it's done at the temple or the church, we gather the family together, and then they hear the Dharma, they chant, but then they also socialize. And it's very wonderful as a minister. One of the most rewarding parts for me as a minister is seeing how the families progress from the hospital to the 49th day service to the 1 year service. And at the 1 year service, we're still gathering, we're still doing the same rituals, but people are laughing. They're talking about their loved one, and they're talking about how they are connected, the interconnectedness with them. And so it's wonderful to see that how with Jodo Shinshu, with our traditions, that we nurture this development from the very severe grief and pain of the immediate passing to the realization that after a year, life does continue on. I had a very emotional service. I was going to do a service at someone's home, and it was a couple, and the daughter had committed suicide. And so for me, it was a very awkward situation. It's like, well, how can I give them comfort when this horrible event? She was only 16 years old. She was in high school, and it was the 3rd year memorial service, so it had happened 3 years before. And so, again, about being part of the Jodo Shinshu community, we're on Dogye, we're fellow travelers. So yes, I'm the minister, yes, I went to the Institute of Buddhist Studies, I've got the robes, but I'm not any different than the rest of the people of you in the Sangha, whether you're there in person or virtually, we're all equal. And so sometimes it takes the Sangha to remind me about how we're all together on this path together. So I was going to their home, they asked me to do the service in their home, and I was very cautious on how I was going to approach the subject matter. So I go in there, and on the wall was the picture. They have 2 children, 2 girls that are a year apart. And so there's the pictures of the girls when they're little like this, and then the one daughter got married, but the other daughter who passed, her picture stopped. So it was very emotional to see that in person. And sitting there and talking, so I gave my Dharma talk. But what happened was I learned from this grieving family how the Dharma was important and how she had taken what she had heard in the Makara Gyo, the Palo service, what she had heard in the 49th day service, how she had taken those to heart. So in a non-traditional way, the husband was the one that was not able to get over the passing of the daughter, whereas the mother was able to pick up and continue on with her life. And what she did is that she said that she understood that her daughter's passing because she worked for the state government here in Fresno, and that she was in the office, and she, like 3 months after her daughter passed, she realized that her coworker had a child that had committed suicide around the same time. And they were literally in the same room, and they could have been giving each other support. And so that came clear to her, and she says, well, and she started talking to her friend, and then she went on to volunteer. She went on to volunteer and learned how to do grief counseling for families. And she says, this is how my daughter still lives through me. She's not here physically, but she's here with me both in my spiritual realm and how I'm helping other people. And I think it's a wonderful example. So here I go trying to be the wise minister, giving her the advice, and I learned a wonderful lesson of the Dharma from this family and how they dealt with grieving. So getting back to the idea of death, One of the key concepts that we talk about in Jodo Shinju and all forms of Buddhism is called impermanence. And impermanence means that things never last the same. Nothing stays the same forever. We can see this we understand that in our daily life, things come and go. But then there are other things that we just take for advantage that they're always going to be there. So for here in Fresno, we have the beautiful mountain ranges that I can see in the distance. But I know that those mountain ranges have worn down over the centuries, that nothing stays the same. And so how do we take this idea of impermanence? Because we take it into our lives and we realize that things aren't always the same. But the Buddha would say that we cause our own suffering because we want things not to change. So what we do is we look at life and we say, oh, my friendship with Tom is broken down and I really wish that we could still be friends, but that's not going to happen. My wishing for it to be permanent and not change is unrealistic. And that's not a negative teaching at all. What it does is it teaches us to look at life and try to appreciate things for what they were. The idea right now of impermanence is that things will always constantly change. And it is our attitude about how we focus on it that is important. Just like the woman I explained that took the death of her daughter to come to the realization that she wanted to help others in the same situation, is looking at impermanence in a more positive way. So when we look at the altar, when we look at the Onaijin, for those that are there in person, you can see that we have the flowers. The flowers are always fresh flowers because they change and they're beautiful now, but we know that they will eventually fade. Here in Central Cal, when we have 115-degree days, they don't even last very much through the service. And the idea is we're not looking and saying, oh, it's horrible the flowers are passing or the flowers are withering. The idea is that we appreciate them for what they are in this moment. So like the flip side of the coin for that about impermanence is that we take that and we realize that things are constantly in change, but we try to be present in the moment. And so the idea that with looking at impermanence as a realistic change, it lightens up our burden for how we go through our life. So at the beginning of this talk, what I read is a passage, and this passage is what the minister will read or the lay leader will read before the casket or the urn for when the person is at a funeral service or a memorial service. And what it is saying is that what we're doing is we're letting go of the physical form of our loved one, and what we're doing is they are going into the greater realm of nirvana to be one with the universe again. So for those of you that went through the affirmation ceremony where you received a Buddhist name, and usually if someone does not receive a Buddhist name in their lifetime, the minister will give them a Buddhist name, a homyo. And the reason that we do that is because even though I am Kurt here in this world right now, that when I pass, then I'll be Kyosei, which is my Buddhist name, which means the teacher of the vow. And so this is the idea of symbolically saying goodbye to this world, realizing that in memories of my friends and family, the person that has passed will always be with their family and friends, and they're not gone forever, but we're saying goodbye to the physical form. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to finish the talk. I would like to reread what we read at the service in front of the urn or the casket. Can you please join me in Gasho? Flowing and turning in the three worlds of delusion, and unable to sever the bonds of desire and attachment, discarding them now and entering into the uncreated, becoming a true and real being of gratitude and indebtedness. I go to the Buddha for guidance, I go to the Dharma for guidance, I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Datsu, Namo Datsu, Namo Datsu. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Kurt, out there in Fresno, and for being with us virtually and with our home audience virtually, and giving us that wonderful Dharma talk about Buddhist death rituals, because it is true, death is the opposite side of life. It's not always a bad thing. It seems to us because of our attachments that it is, but actually, when you look at it differently, you can look at it differently. So, Namo Amida Butsu, thank you very much. And so now, if you can, rise for the gathas on Dakusan on page 134 and Nembutsu on page 135.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Please be seated.
And now we come to the fun part of the service of acknowledgments and announcements. And so at this point, we like to welcome first-time visitors. And so if there is anyone here for the first time, Lily will give you the microphone and you can say your name and tell us how you came to join us today. Anybody?
My first time on Sunday. I came here a bunch of years ago. My name is Emily, and I remembered this place and I wanted to come back. I came for the study session, I think, so I've never been here on a Sunday.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, welcome back.
Thank you.
Come again. Anyone else? Okay. So now I'd like to thank the people that have made the service possible today, and starting with Maiko Tanaka, who helped with the setup of the altar and read the creed, and John Skelly, I see, back there, played the piano, and our crack IT team, David Brady, back from Japan, and Carl Palma. Thank you so much. And Lily, of course, who also helped and is part of the team. And we really appreciate everything that you do. The flowers today are particularly gorgeous, and they are by Junko Yamakawa, who is a Sogetsu Ikebana teacher. And she teaches a few times a month here at the church, and there's a flyer in the back. So I encourage you to pick that up and check it out, and you can maybe make flowers like this at home. But it's very beautiful. And David has one.
I want to thank Lily and Kwan and Maiko for holding down the fort in my absence over the past 3 weeks.
Yes, that's very important. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's crucial. It's crucial, and so many of you have been appreciative of being able to watch these services from outside, and they have brought it to you. Now I would like to just go over some upcoming events. I have a few. Next week, we have a special service honoring our recent graduates, and there are 6 of them, and including Lily and Kwan, who we're very proud of. And so be here for that. And 2 of them will speak at the service as well. So that will be very nice. And then there is, on the following week, June 18th, we will observe Pride Month here at New York Buddhist Church, and we have Sangha member Matt Kaufman, who resides in Boston. He will give us a video Dharma talk that day, and he's actually really bright, so I really think that will be cool. So I hope you will all attend that, either virtually or in person. And then on the 25th is the regular service. And after that, we will march in the Pride Parade downtown. So it's a full month. There are some other events coming up. There is our usual classes on Saturdays, which you can look online to see what they are. Our meditation and classes are only virtual at this point. They're via Zoom. And then we have this new thing called Buddha at the Movies, and there is a flyer in the back, and that's facilitated by Matt, who will be speaking, and Brian here. And the movie this month is Kung Fu Panda. I'm repressing this. Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda. And the way it works,
The way it works is that you watch it at home, and then you join the session, and they will lead us in a discussion and find the Buddhist elements in it. And this is part of an ongoing thing that we're doing, and we're trying to, there's a group out there trying to have movies here in the Hondo. Kwan, did you want to mention something about that? In a week? Okay, so stay tuned for that, because they're working on actually having movies here in the Hondo, and that will be cool as well, and maybe these two things can be integrated. Okay, so stay tuned. Lots going on, and that concludes our service for this week. So let us place our palms together in Gasho. Let us remember all those who died in the month of June, whether their names were read here or not. And let us be grateful for the teachings of Shinran Shonin that we find here. It is through their efforts that we are here today, and we dedicate our lives to spreading the Dharma the same way. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. So thank you very much. The biggest thanks is to you for coming and being here, because otherwise wouldn't be any point to it, would there? So thank you so much.